guys, Canon Teague with Teague Tractor. Today we're going to go over some of our top mowing tips and tricks for the new zero turn owner. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is mowing header strips around the perimeter of your lawn. So think of your lawn as a big rectangle. You're going to start, and we'll overlap some footage. You'll start on the perimeter and mow your header strips around the edge of the property, around any trees, any flower beds, mow around those to get header strips along everything. And then you're going to want to mow back and forth, alternating side to side as you mow the lawn. And you're going to want to overlap the edge of the deck each lap by about 1/8 of the width of the overall deck. So that way it keeps it nice and consistent. It's easy to line up. You'll get those nice stripes. And you want to leave enough gap between the header strip and then the uncut grass that you're able to turn around and continue to mow. All right, the next thing in tip number 2 is going to be don't cut your grass too short. Now, some of this is going to be personal preference. This is particularly the case for cool season grasses, but you're not going to want to cut that grass too short, especially as we get into the hotter months, spring and summer, that you don't want your grass to get scorched. So number one, it's going to look better. It's healthier for the grass. The roots in that grass system will get deeper, and it'll also, the taller the grass that you're manicuring, is going to prevent some of that crabgrass and weeds. So there's a fine line. You don't want to cut it too short. You obviously don't want to leave it too long to where there's ticks. It's uncomfortable to walk through. But 3 inches to 4 is pretty much going to be that range. Most people are going to start around 3. As the season goes hotter, they'll get up a little bit higher, maybe 3.5 to that 4-inch mark. All right, tip number 3 is going to be don't remove more than 1/3 of the length of your blade of grass at one cutting. So get the initial cut of the season done. So it just hit spring. You go out and mow for the first time. Pick whatever height that you select for that grass in that first cut. Get it done, and then stick to a schedule throughout the spring and summer. So don't go out, let it grow up another 5-6 inches, and then cut another 3 of it down. Get that initial cut done, stick to a schedule, and cut off just 1/3 of that grass blade each time that you mow. If a situation arises to where maybe you go out of town for a couple weeks and somebody's not mowing for you and that grass gets too tall, try to break it down into a couple different mows. So cut 1/3 of the top off, come back in a couple days, and then cut it down. It's going to cost you a little bit of time. It'll be a little bit of an inconvenience, but it's better for the overall health of your lawn. All right, so number 4, never scalp your lawn, meaning don't set that deck so low to where when you're making turns, the bottom edge of that deck is scraping and catching dirt. You're going to damage the root system to a degree where it will probably die. You're going to have to go back out, re-aerate, reseed, patch that grass back up. It just doesn't look good. Number one, it kicks up dirt, which it will suck that up into the blades. Dirt, gravel, that's probably the 2 quickest things that are going to dull blades more than anything else. So don't scalp it. Not good for the grass. Dulls blades. Makes your lawn look terrible. Never scalp. All right, number 5 is going to be don't mow if it's wet or dark, or at least try to avoid both of these scenarios. I understand commercial guys, you're mowing when the time allows and when clients need you to do it. So this is specifically going to be more for the homeowner. You have the option to not mow if it's damp or wet. Number one, it's not going to tear up your grass. The less traction that you have, the more you're going to strip that top layer off. So if it's wet, you are going to tear stuff up and rut. You're going to spread mud everywhere. It's going to make the machine extremely dirty. The underside of your deck is going to get caked with all that grass. It's going to harden up. It's going to make an insane racket typically underneath there with the spindles. And we typically will see some maintenance issues related to grass buildup on the underside of a deck. So if you do have to mow when it's a little damp, make sure you do clean that up right away. Don't let that grass sit there and solidify. And then in relation to mowing when it's dark, I understand you get home, it's a little dark, and you want to get that mowing done. They do sell some light kits that will help alleviate some of the safety concerns mowing when it's dark. Number one, it's hard to see what you're doing. Keep straight lines and make the lawn look good. It's also not very safe if there's stuff in the yard that you can't see that you kick up. You end up throwing a stick or a rock through your window. That's avoidable. So don't mow when it's wet, or at least avoid it if you can. Don't mow when it's dark. Avoid it if you can. All right, so the next tip is going to be to avoid throwing grass clippings into your street, especially if your house is on a street and you're mowing along that ditch or the roadside. Try to orient yourself to where the mower is blowing that grass back into where you're going to be cutting, as opposed to out onto the street. It looks like crap, number one. It's a little disrespectful, especially if people are driving by. you could potentially throw a piece of rock, stick, debris into their car as they drive by. It also will get washed into the sewer system, which isn't great. And it also is a little unsafe for motorcyclists. They can lose traction on some of that grass buildup, as well as cyclists. Not that we care about cyclists. Joking, we do care about cyclists, but to the point, it is unsafe, so don't throw it out into the street. If you do, and it's unavoidable, make sure you pretty quickly go back out and use a leaf blower. You can actually go in reverse with your mower and use the PTO and the blades to blow the grass back in. You'll see some commercial guys doing that as well. Just get it out of the street if you can. All right, so the next tip, and this is going to be contrary to most people, a lot of people's opinions or what they've read on the internet, is that you can leave grass clippings and buildup on the surface of your lawn. It's not going to add to thatch buildup like a lot of people talk about. A grass blade is about 75% water. So, number one, it's going to decompose and get rid of very quickly. If you also live in a high wind area, so I'm out in Kansas, is where I live, out in the middle of pretty high wind areas. So, number one, those clippings are getting blown off and dusted off. There's really no accumulation, especially if you're manicuring that lawn, cutting off, like we already talked about, a third of the grass each mow. You're never going to have that clumpy buildup. So even if you do, it's really not going to do anything bad to your lawn. It helps bring nutrients back into the soil and the grass. So long-term health, it's good. It's also, it takes a lot of time to get rid of that stuff, to go bag it and everything else. So eliminate that step. Don't listen to those on the internet that probably don't mow much. It's okay to leave those clippings, brings nutrients back. Don't worry about it. All right, so the next tip is going to be alternate the direction that you mow. So if one week you went vertically, if you got, let's just think in that rectangle again, if you went long ways one week with your pattern, the next time that you mow, go widthwise or go the opposite direction or perpendicular to the pattern that you mowed the previous week. Reason for that, it helps the grass grow straighter. It doesn't set a pattern, so you're going to get a cleaner cut. That's pretty important, especially with shorter grass types. So alternate directions. It's a little healthier for the grass. It's also going to look better. You're going to get those nicer, straighter, clean Yankees ballpark stadium looking lines. So alternate directions for that tip. All right, next up on the list is keep your blades sharp throughout the mowing season. So the sharper blades is going to cut your grass more crisp and cleaner. It's going to help reduce the size of those clippings. So you're not gonna have those larger pieces of grass. The sharper blades are going to chop those up finer and cleaner, smaller. Another tip along with that is going to be maybe keep an extra set of blades. So if you're not sharpening throughout the season, it's a little convenient to have an extra set of already sharpened blades. Swap them out, take them into your dealer, have them sharpen them, or sharpen them yourself. That way you've always got a set of sharp blades throughout the course of the season. All right, so the next tip is going to be along the lines of maintenance. So make sure you're changing that oil. Your mower manual is going to have the intervals in which you should change it. Your first oil change is going to be your initial break-in change. Keep that. They really want you to keep it between 5 and 10 hours. So that's going to be that first initial oil change. So brand new oil filter, couple quarts of oil, replace that, change the oil, and then at least once, typically throughout the course of the season. Not a bad idea to change that oil again, or at least at the end of the year at the bare minimum. And that's typically going to be around that 50-hour mark or once a year. It's always a safer bet if you're at that 30-hour mark, you haven't changed it. Go ahead and just get it done. Keep that engine nice and clean and running throughout the course of the season. All right, the last tip we're going to talk about on the list is putting some stabilizer in the fuel before you leave it over the winter or at the end of the mowing season. So do not let that gas sit over the winter without any kind of stabilizer. Brand does not matter. I personally use Seafoam. I use that on my bass boat, my outboard, as well as my lawnmowers and equipment. Any kind of stabilizer will work. Just make sure you're putting that in there before the mower sits over the course of the winter into the next spring. Some people will completely drain the tanks and then they'll put new fuel in it at the start of the season. If you're putting stabilizer in, it's totally fine to just leave that in there over the winter. It's going to run just fine in the next spring. So just don't let it sit without any stabilizer, or at the very least, replace that fuel with new fuel for the next season. All right, there you have it. Thanks for watching. Those are some very basic, for those new first-time zero-turn owners or mowers that are out there this season, some very common things that we typically will cover with customers, things that we see and hear, some of the putting some of those myths to bed in terms of the bagging and the mulching. Grass is totally fine. These are all tips that we have found to be pretty helpful for those new zero-turn owners. If there's anything we missed or something that you have a question on, our contact information is in the description. Please reach out. We're happy to help you guys with any questions on equipment, any tips for mowing, anything based on our experience that we're happy to help with. Please reach out. Thanks for watching.